So this week's episode of Fruits Basket, we get to see some of the darkness within this Soma clan. We get to learn a lot of information, just seeing actually how big this clan is and the whole idea of the inside and the outside, which was pretty interesting, especially because the only ones who are kind of classified as the insides are those who turn into the Zodiacs or associated with them, with the rest just being a part of the clan. But it doesn't change the fact that you can tell that the head of the family, Akito, horrible person, but you gotta appreciate having a character like this in Fruits Basket, because without Akito, you wouldn't have much of a very complex story. It would just feel like everything is safe and comfy and fun, but with a character like this, you're like, okay, this is getting interesting. We really get to see a lot of insight into Hattori in this episode, and I quite liked this. This was probably my favorite episode out of the 7 so far. It was a really great episode that I really enjoyed learning about what's happened to this family in the past and just what led a character like him into being what appears to be so stone cold and ruthless, but really is a very tortured soul who blames himself for his love's basically death, so you could speak, wiping away the memories of the love they had to force her away so she could find someone else after being tormented for blaming what happened to his eye. It's a very interesting episode, and what I love is even though you have so much very in-your-face, this is gloomy, this is depressing, there's quite a few moments throughout this episode that just visually are pretty sad in itself. Momoji is a character who typically when you look at this kid, you would say, oh, this is just going to be an adult who looks like a kid, carries around a pillow and stuffed animals, things like that. You typically know what to expect with this character design and archetype. However, you're seeing that this is a pretty tortured soul along the others. Hugging the pillow in the middle of this talk, explaining what's happened in the past and how, if you value your life, you're going to go away, Toru, you don't want to be around, because no matter what anyone says, this person will hurt you as they've hurt me. And you just see what appears to be someone just cowering in fear, hugging the pillow almost like a safety blanket. And I really like that. It's the small moments that really turn an episode into something so mesmerizing and magical, and I quite like that. It'll be exciting to learn even more about this character, but for this week's episode, it was definitely Hattori, and I loved it. I really enjoyed learning just how depressing it actually was, and I enjoyed that. I enjoyed seeing the darkness and really kind of foreshadowing the curse and just what could really happen to Toru if she isn't careful. This curse definitely appears to be that no matter what, unless the head of the family is saying this is okay, bad shit is going to happen, forcing your hand so no matter what, something horrible will happen. And it almost feels like the curse is related to the head of the family, Akito, and not actually these people, but they're blaming themselves when in actuality they should be blaming the head of the family who is causing all of this madness and just despair and heartbreak. And I like that, especially because you can tell that, someone like Toru would definitely be way better at the head of the clan, because you're seeing that just every one of these members of the Zodiacs that she meets, she pretty much impacts their life in a positive way. When for every scene that we've seen with Akito, it's the complete opposite. It's darkness and despair, and you can tell that this isn't going to go well for her, and there's going to be some struggle, which I quite like. Just seeing how this clan operates on the kind of smaller side, especially because Hattori did get a assistant who eventually he fell in love with, and just seeing that, after being together and kind of bringing out this happiness, the head of the family, throws you into a glass mirror, you're almost blind in one eye, and the person you love goes so insane with guilt that they are just a tormented soul, and the only way to save them is to comfort them and say, you have to forget. And you can see just the manipulative side to this family, and just it's very disgusting, but it leads to such interesting stories that I kind of love it in my own sick way. I really liked seeing it both being told to Toru as well as seeing it from his perspective when he's kind of contemplating and reflecting on what's happening, really thinking that this will be Toru. It doesn't matter if the head of the family has said, you're okay to live with the Somas, there has to be an ulterior motive. And I like that because we, the viewer, know Toru should probably run and hide, but this is also the family that has made her kind of feel at peace, and she shouldn't and can't do that. And I like that, especially because there's a moment where you see this girl and she's mentioning how she's getting married and it was a shame that she couldn't be with her dream man, which is still Hattori, but she did find happiness, and there's no guilt or blame or anything. He's just happy that what he did cause for her to be happy. But of course, in the back of your mind, you're also thinking, well, if this head of the family wasn't a horrible person, they could have been together. And it's pretty interesting, especially because there's so many similarities between Toru as well as this other girl, Kana, because Toru is someone, the reaction to when it's revealed what his zodiac is identical. Do I do salt water? Do I do normal water? What's going on? And it's kind of cute just seeing how innocent and pure Toru is, and how she has this way of kind of connecting with the deeper side of emotions for this clan, and rather than it just feeling like here's a harem that's growing, it just feels like she's really bringing out the vulnerable emotions, the sweet emotions, and just those emotions that people really need to confront. And rather than hiding away in fear because the head of your family could do things bad, people are starting to recognize that maybe they could push back. And even though this one person seems to be pulling the strings and kind of revealing the curse, really, if you cut off the head of the snake, I think you'd be alright. And that's really interesting to me because even though you're focusing on Toru's story of growing with people and the relationships that follows, you're also getting this kind of Soma clan story that is pretty corrupt and disturbing in its own right. And I really like how they can bring out the very dark and gloomy atmosphere, both with the music, but as well just with the visual directing, with those subtle cues like I mentioned with hugging the pillow, with a character who's just to the side of the screen when we should be focusing on Toru, but you kind of glance over and think, holy shit, these people are actually scared. And you know someone like Toru would not run and hide. She would head face first with these people. And even if that would get her memories erased, she wouldn't back down. And I really like that because even though this episode did have its fair share of very cute moments of reactions, you know, BFFs, and just seeing all the adorable reactions, like you can't tell her my zodiac because it's such a ridiculous animal to turn into when you get hugged by the opposite sex. It is just amazing to watch, but then you get all the more dark and gloomy aspects, and I really like it because you're getting to see that, like, when we get introduced to a character, even if they don't have a lot of time to really flesh out in their introduction episode, we are going to have the chance to flesh them out in their own arcs, either with flashbacks explaining why they're currently like this, but obviously with also future arcs and how Toru will bring out who they truly want to be and not run and hide in kind of a cowardly fear because the head of the family is a horrible and disgusting person. And what I'm really excited to learn a lot about is Akito and what led this person to be this way. Because even though we're seeing the results of these horrible actions, like, what happened? Like, is this curse affecting the head, or like is just naturally born being a horrible person? That's going to be really exciting to learn because you need characters that are going to shake up the cast in a negative way because it's going to make for very interesting sequences. And for a clan as large as this, with people who may not turn into the Zodiacs, but also those that can, there's a lot of interesting political things at play, which is really exciting to see what's going to go down, and also where Toru is going to go within this family, because I think everyone can agree Toru would be a much better head of the family than what we're seeing here. But obviously I don't know where the story truly wants to go, but that's the exciting thing about Fruits Basket, is as you're seeing these characters being like, oh shit, she left again, I can't believe Toru's gone, and you have to have Shikurai being like, yo, she just went out with some friends, it's okay, you gotta stop worrying about it. There's all these cute moments, both with the reactions and just with some of the subtle dialogue that gets stated, but then you get all this really interesting visual directing and just framing of shots to give this very gloomy and at times almost horror-like atmosphere, because it is just clearly trying to indicate that there's something to be feared with this family. There is a curse that not everything has been revealed, that almost like when good things could happen to them, bad things are surely to follow, but you have someone like Toru who clearly wouldn't take that as an answer. No is not an answer for her. She's going to tackle it, even if it says the world will end if you interact with these people. If she cares for these people, she'll interact with them and try to punch the meteor that's going to come crashing down, even if she physically can't. Like, that's exactly who she is, and it's quite interesting to see how different she is to the head of the family, who is very much trying to get them to embrace the darkness and guilt and pretty much take comfort into Akito. Rather, with Toru, she tries to bring out the best in people and let them take comfort in themselves, recognizing their own beauty and positiveness. It's such a different contrast, and you can see why everyone is drawn to her, because if you're growing up in a clan where someone is pretty much saying that you're a cursed and horrible and just disgusting creature, and then you have someone like Toru being like, you're beautiful in your own right, you can clearly see why the head of the family would want to keep an eye on this person, and also, when the time comes, probably cut off the head of the snake, because Toru to Akito would clearly be the snake in this case. And that's really interesting. Fruits Basket continues to get more and more interesting as it goes on, and I'm really excited to see the future, because when we have the simpler stories of the cutesy and just fun moments, that's adorable. I love it. It also, in its own right, kind of brings out a very interesting character dynamic. And then when we get into the serious and the dark and gloomy, it's also amazing. And obviously, when we get into the more romantic aspects, that's going to be great in itself. Like, the voice actors are giving it their all to bring out those great and vulnerable emotions. The soundtrack, especially in this episode, probably had my favorite pieces of music because of just how almost bone-chilling it was, just being like, this is a tense atmosphere. You kind of want to turn away, but you also kind of want to head face first, because Toru is someone who wouldn't back down. and really wants to see what's going on here. Really hope Toru stays away from the head of the family for quite some time, because that kind of car passing by sequence was pretty brutal in its own right. But this was a great episode. Really excited to see where the future of the series is going to go, where they really want to explore next, because so far all the characters are interesting in their own right, and rather than just being a typical copy and paste, here's a trope and gimmicky persona, they're allowing them to actually flesh out and be characters, so that persona actually makes a whole lot of sense for their narrative, and that's really exciting. Visual directing is incredibly important to me, especially for anime, because it is a visual medium, and just seeing all the subtle clues and just how they really focus on characters' reactions is something that really sells the emotional impact to most of these scenes. If it was more basic directing of just here's a close-up of a character looking depressing, it would be an okay scene just because the script is pretty solid, but the way they'll frame it and just the shifting of perspective or shattering someone's memories, the little details really make the scene so much better than what they initially were designed to be with the script. And that's what I love, is that you can tell this is a passion project, that not only did they want to adapt the full manga, but they wanted to add these personal touches so it feels like the best modern anime has to offer, and you can tell the staff is giving it their all, and they so far haven't let up after 7 episodes, and they can keep this quality. Even if the quality were to drop by like 30%, it would still be enough to really hold this together as being a masterpiece, my honest opinion. That's a strong word, I know, but that's how I'm feeling about this series right now. It's incredibly amazing, and so far I'd still say it's probably my anime of the season, and this is a season with a couple of shows that really deserve that title. That really states how much I'm enjoying Fruits Basket 2019. For everyone who did watch this week's episode of Fruits Basket, for fans of the original manga, the original anime, or anime originals like myself, what did you think of this week's episode? Did you love it as much as myself, or did you have a couple of flaws with it? Let me know. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy, and also hit that subscribe button if you haven't been new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.